Alright, I think we're live. Sometimes you don't know. Let's just assume we are. So good evening. Thanks to those of you who are joining. And thanks to those of you who will be watching the recording. I appreciate it. My name is Dr. Josh Franco. I'm an assistant professor of political science at Cuyamaca College. And welcome to Poliventure. It's an 8-week workshop series that, let me pull up the slide, that explores how games relate to concepts in political science. So I'll be live streaming a whole bunch of different games, which was done in the past 2 months, and discuss how different elements of the game can relate to political science. These workshops are live streamed on Twitch on Wednesdays from 7:30 to 8. And obviously, you can go to poliventure.com to watch the live stream. With that said, this is our schedule for fall 2021. We started back in October, and we are in our final week. So this is it for the semester. We started off with 7 concepts, and then we discussed communication, information, strategy, moves, network. We took a break for Thanksgiving, and then we came back for probability. Sad part about this one is that Twitch did not record my sad face emoji. I don't actually have the emoji. They don't give us it like on Zoom. But in any case, I was pretty bummed out. It didn't record. And then today we'll be talking about signals. So if you're interested, you can watch the probability stuff from last time, which is close to what I discussed last week from the summer recordings. And again, this is live stream on Twitch. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to week 8, our final one for the semester. Signals. So our learning objectives with this workshop are, first is to define signals. Secondly is to explain how signals exist in games. And then third is to explain how signals exist with a real-life political example. Now recall that there were 7 concepts that we have discussed: communication, information, strategy, moves, network, probability, and signals. Now these are some what I believe to be the core concepts of political science in general. Obviously there's a whole range of other things with the discipline that we can talk about. You'll learn about if you take a class with me or you take a class with some other professor in the field. Just know that I like to talk about these concepts because I feel like they're relevant to our daily lives, but also common enough in the discipline that it kind of helps root you in things that you'll be encountering as you're engaging with a class like this. Now our concept and focus for tonight is signals, and a signal is basically some kind of message that's sent, and a signal can be more clear or it can be less clear. So note that a signal that's more clear is representative of someone's strategy, while a signal that's less clear is a signal that's not representative of someone's strategy. Now when I introduce this concept in classes, one question comes up, it's like, okay, so what are more examples of signals? So for example, if you tell somebody out loud that you're going to go right, they will assume that you are going to do what you just said, so they'll also go to the right, which means that you will pass each other in the hallway or on a sidewalk of some sort. Now if you tell somebody you're going to go to the right, but you actually end up going to the left, now they were expecting you to go to the right, so you'll bump into each other because you'll both be on the left side of the road or the highway or the sidewalk. Now what happens the second time around, that person sees you, they say, which way are you going? And you say, I'm going to go to the right. But what they're going to do is they're going to think, well, last time he said he was going to go to the right, but he actually went to the left. So I'm going to assume that what he's telling me is not accurate, and I'm going to go to the opposite side. So I'm going to go to the left even though he said he's going to go right. In this case, you would pass each other, assuming you stay to your approach of saying one thing but doing another. Now, those are signals. The first example, you say you're going to go right and you're going right, it's a very clear signal. When you say you're going to go to the right but you actually go left, that's a less clear signal, right? Another example could be when you start a class for the first time and you go up to your professor at the end of the class, say, I'm looking forward to doing really well in your course, and I'm going to do my best to get an A in your class. Now, what you're doing is you're sending a signal to your professor saying, all right, this student is ready, they're motivated, they're letting me know what their goals are, and you're going to want to support them, right? And then what happens over the course of, let's say, a 16-week semester is that you see the student being in class, engaging in discussion, completing assignments, and the signal that they sent at the beginning of the semester is indicative, is representative of the strategy that they had for the entire semester, which is show up, be on time, be successful with their courses, and eventually they pass the class. Now, sometimes you might have folks who don't send that signal outwardly or explicitly. Like a student doesn't come up to you and say, "I'm going to be successful in your class, professor. I'm going to work really hard." Now, you might say, "Well, what signal are they sending?" In this case, the signal is either non-existent because you don't know, or the signal will be developed over time as you see them showing up to class, maybe participating in discussion, completing assignments, and the like. So even though we can have more clear signals and less clear signals, we can also have spaces where there's no signals at all, so we won't be able to pick up on anything. Now, what I like to do is operationalize this concept of more clear, less clear with the game of Stratego. And let me go ahead and pull that up here. Louder that I like. So let me just lower my volume here. So we're going to do a quick battle. Do a new one. And here we see I'm going up against the computer player, so I'm going to start with the process of moving my troop. Now, what I've done by moving this troop here is I'm sending a signal that this person obviously can move forward, but that I want them to be the first move. And this person's also done that. The nice thing about Stratego is that you don't know what the opposite player's capacities or strengths are. So, like, for example, you see the B here in the right corner, the bomb, that doesn't get to move. And so the other player doesn't know that. But by sending one of your items up, what you're saying is that this is a movable object, so it's not a bomb. So right away you're revealing some information. So let's go ahead and move this over to the left. And I'm going to move it back to the right. And I'm going to go ahead and move it one more time. And then I'm going to go ahead and move it back this way. So that player, as you just noticed, he went from his front line all the way towards my player. And because he was able to move it all the way through, that's called a scout. And there's two of those, as you see on the right-hand side over here. So now there's some information that's been provided just with these set of moves. The first one is that my player here can go from one spot to the other, back and forth, so they have range of movement in all four directions. That he's attacked with one of his scouts, and now that scout lost to my captain here, and that there's another one that's moving in different directions as well. So I have now more information about this person's strategy, which is they're going to try to do this kind of quick strike, and they missed out. And I certainly know that now they only have one scout left. So we'll go ahead and keep doing the dance over here with my player. So it says here, move not allowed. Endlessly chasing an enemy or moving back and forth more than 4 times is not allowed. Alright, point taken. Go ahead and move this way. I just got beat by the general. So the general, I now know their status, and he also knows that he defeated one of my players, and that I don't have any more of them. So now I'm a little afraid. General's going to town on my guys. Defeated 2 of his scouts now, which means he can't move around too much. So as we play this game, what's happening is I'm sending signals to the opposing player that these are the types of movements I'm making. Here's the types of players that are able to engage. And the reality is that every time you reveal one of your characters, you're providing more information. You're sending a signal about what you have and what you have remaining, especially because you have these trackers here on the left and on the right for each respective player. So overall, Stratego is a pretty fascinating game because you essentially can engage in this entire process, and obviously the goal is to defeat your opponent. So we're able to do that. There's my miners here, so now, if you play this game in real life with people, it's so much fun because you are going to be engaging in this signal game pretty consistently. Here I'm playing against the computer, so it's like that interaction that you have with another player is not the same, right? So when I played this with my wife or my friends, things get pretty animated pretty fast because you like are expecting to have fun. You're expecting to play this game upright, but what happens is you know that the other player's trying to send signals that are less clear or not representative of their strategy. So like, for example, I haven't moved this player type yet, and the computer player might be saying, okay, he moved it a couple of times, he was engaged in this kind of back and forth, but I haven't seen them do anything since. I can't look at these things. Beats Marshall. That's almost it for me. So hopefully this gives you just a little sense of how you can have a game where there's signaling, right, based on the type of object you move, and it reveals some information based on how far you move it in the case like the scout, and then depending on how often you move it, you might be trying to avoid it being attacked or trying to position in a way so that it can play a greater role in your strategy of capturing the opponent's flag. So I'll go ahead and just run this through a little bit more, see what happens. And then now I know where one of the bombs is located. So all in all, it's just an overall interesting game. Minimize it from here. So the next thing I'd like to show you is the concept of signals in real life. And we're going to go ahead and pull up this article in Politico titled Senate Issues Rebuke of Biden's Workplace Vaccine Mandate. So let's go ahead and open up this link. I'll let it load here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and have this read to us. Byline is, most Democrats blasted the repeal efforts as ridiculous and anti-science and warned it would prolong the pandemic and facilitate the emergence of a new COVID variants. So we'll go ahead and put this into reader mode, and then we'll go ahead and have it play for us here.
Senate issues rebuke of Biden's workplace vaccine mandate. Most Democrats blasted the repeal effort as ridiculous and anti-science, and warned it would prolong the pandemic and facilitate the emergence of new COVID variants. The Senate issued a high-profile rebuke of President Joe Biden's vaccine mandate on large businesses Wednesday night, in a largely symbolic vote to get rid of a key component of the administration's COVID-19 response. Democrats Joe Manchin, West Virginia, and John Tester, Mont, joined all the Republicans present in the 52-48 vote after critics assailed the mandate as an example of federal overreach and dismissed its option of weekly testing for workers who refused to get shots as an insufficient accommodation. lawmakers employed a mechanism called the Congressional Review Act that offers a fast track for wiping out administrative rules. A companion petition in the House is still short of the 218 signatures needed to force a floor vote, and the White House has already promised to veto any disapproval measure that clears Congress. However, Wednesday's vote highlighted the ongoing challenges the administration faces in its attempts to end the pandemic and the deep divisions on Capitol Hill and around the country on how best to do so.
The article should have been a little bit longer. Yeah, it is. Alright, let me keep it reading for us.
The vaccine mandate on businesses with more than 100 employees is already being challenged in court, but Republicans said they wanted to use the legislative maneuver rather than let the judicial process play out. Senator Mike Braun, RIND, the leader of the Senate petition, called the Biden administration's rule government in overdrive, while Senator Roy Blunt, RMO, likened it to authoritarianism, even as they and other Republicans stressed that they personally support getting vaccinated. "Hi, I'm Mike and I'm pro-vaccine," Senator Mike Lee, R. Utah, joked to reporters at a Wednesday press conference. "But I'm anti-mandate because I'm pro-worker." Most Democrats blasted the repeal effort as ridiculous and anti-science, and warned it would prolong the pandemic and facilitate the emergence of new COVID variants. "The biggest thing standing between us and the end of the pandemic is Americans who have refused to get vaccinated," Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Wednesday. "The worst thing we can do is to tie our own hands behind our backs." Yet the Republican minority successfully forced the vote with the backing of Manchin and Tester, two centrist Democrats, who expressed concern about the mandate's impact on businesses back in their states. The parallel House effort has the unanimous backing of the chamber's Republicans. Representative Fred Keller, RPA, who is leading the petition, said the GOP caucus is confident it can peel off enough Democratic defections from lawmakers in swing districts, and is aiming for a vote in January, though an aide for the new Democrat coalition of House moderates said they know of no members who are considering backing the bill. Representative Fred Keller, RPA, speaks at the Capitol. "This is a measure that has us standing with the American people," Keller told Politico in a phone interview. "They've done the right thing during the pandemic, and we trust they can continue to do that without a mandate." The Biden administration pointed to the recent success of mandates in the military, federal agencies, and some large corporations in pushing vaccination rates well over 90%, and cited the backing of the Business Roundtable and several major labor unions. Earlier this week, the White House poured cold water on the GOP gambit. "If it comes to the president's desk, he will veto it," White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said on Tuesday. She added of the rule in question, "It's based on a 50-year-old law, and we are confident in our ability to implement it." No matter what comes of the effort, Republicans made it clear they will keep fighting the administration's COVID measures, despite mounting virus cases and predictions of a difficult winter. Critics of the private sector mandate in particular argue it will hurt companies already struggling with worker shortages, mass resignations, and other pandemic stressors. "We've been hearing a lot from our businesses," Tester said in an interview ahead of the vote. "I still think that mandates for the military, hospitals, government contractors, that's different." Braun's office said the senator has received more calls from constituents about this issue than any other from his 2 years in office. Pointing to recent court rulings blocking other vaccine mandates imposed by the Biden administration, opponents of the rule also argue it's unconstitutional. "I agree with the Fifth Circuit Court, the federal government doesn't have the authority," Keller said.
So this article obviously is talking about a pretty salient issue about vaccines and vaccine mandates. And what I want to draw to your attention is the signaling that's happening in this article. So a couple things to point out. The first one is just on the title, "The Senate Issues a Rebuke of Biden's Workplace Vaccine Mandate." So what happened is the Senate sent a signal that it was going to bring this for a vote under the Congressional Review Act, and that it was going to schedule the vote, and then it was going to hold the vote. So in 3 separate points, the Senate was signaling to the president, and then to the House of Representatives was also as a part of this process, to say, we're going to bring this issue up. We're going to bring it up soon, and then now we're bringing it up and we're voting on it. And then once the vote has taken place, and that's the strongest, clearest signal that the Senate can send, is that they've taken a position on this issue, and they have, in this case, a 52-48 majority in favor of preventing the president from implementing a private sector vaccine mandate. So that's the first signal that's going on. The second one is that you saw mention here that 2 Democratic senators, Joe Manchin from West Virginia and John Tester from Montana, also joined in with the Republicans. Now you might be saying, okay, what's the signal being sent here? Well, the signal being sent here is to the constituents or to the people who live in the states that these senators represent. So Joe Manchin is signaling to his people in West Virginia, or the people of West Virginia, I should say, that he's opposed to a federal government mandate for the private sector on vaccinations. And so is John Tester. Now, the reverse is also true. So for the 48 members of the Senate who voted against this prohibition, said that they're sending a signal to their constituents in their state saying, we support a vaccine mandate and we believe it's in the public's health's interest. So both in the negative of voting for something and in the affirmative of voting for something, it's signaling, to this case, the constituencies of these senators, which are the states, the people that live in the states they represent. Now, another thing to look to is the House of Representatives, right, where they will now get this measure under the Congressional Review Act and then see what happens. In this case, it doesn't look like it's going to be scheduled for a floor vote because the majority of the House is opposed to this at this point, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. But the idea is like the Senate sent a signal, and now the House can send a signal either by taking no action or acting on it and then voting it down. And let's just assume for some reason that it gets brought up in the House of Representatives and then it's voted down. What we would expect to happen, it's just very clearly signaled by the president's office that he will veto it. So there's a lot of signaling going on amongst the three policy-making bodies of the government. The Senate is taking one step of action. The House is taking signaling that they won't act on anything, and that if for some reason it gets through the House, the president will veto, thereby preventing it. And so all this is to say that in politics there's always a lot of signaling going on, and part of it mostly is to constituents that these individuals represent, probably to the party bases that they need to get the support of in the primary election cycles, which happen earlier in even years. And it's also signaling to a broader audience in the public that they may be trying to cultivate support or affinity with. So all in all, this is to say that in games we see signals, right? I move a player and I can reveal its player's abilities to do things, and the opposing player will pick up on what's going on. You also see it in politics almost all the time, is that there's always what they call shots across the bow, or a clear message is being sent, or sometimes you don't know what's being signaled. And there's plenty of examples of that in politics too, where leaders of political parties or leaders of committees are cryptic or non-revealing about their intentions or their strategies, so they're not sending clear signals. In this article, it's in my mind clear that there's several signals being sent, and just to note that signals are being sent between the political actors, they're being sent to the constituencies that they represent, and then to any other interest groups or audiences that they're trying to play to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up with the overall message of Poliventure, which is in games as in real life, there's a lot of different things that are going on. And my hope is that as you work through these different weeks, that you just got a sense that these different concepts of communication, information, strategy, moves, network, probability, and signals can be broken down into two basic values. For communication, it can be direct or indirect. For moves, it can be simultaneous or sequential. For probability, it can be high or low. And these are things that we consistently see in PC, computer, other games. And most of the times we don't think about those things. Like when you're on, playing a game and you have your headset on and you're talking to other players, what you're doing is engaging in direct communication. Now, say you're on one team and then there's the other team, they're also talking to each other too, but they might see one of your players moving forward to scout a position, and what you're doing is communicating indirectly with them that you're sending someone out to gather information about what's going on and to report back. So that's an indirect form. When you think about strategies, right, there's some games that are cooperative, like if you play the board game Pandemic, that's a cooperative game, or if you play the board game 60 Second City, that's also a cooperative game. But there's a lot of games that are competitive. So things like, I'm thinking like Counter-Strike or Civilization or Settlers of Catan. Those are all games that you're in competition with other players, right? But there's also some elements of cooperation as well. When we think of network, right, we see this in games all the time. It's like I watched my brother play World of Warcraft, and he has like his team of his crew of folks, and they go traveling around finding big monsters to battle, and they always kind of stick together. But then I noticed that he would they position themselves based on the strengths of their players. So they obviously have some melee players who come up close to an opponent. They also have some mid-range players who will kind of lay back from the melee ones, and they'll have some long-range folks who will be farther back in the kind of the design of their team as they're going after a large creature or some other battle figure. And you might say, okay, where's the network there? Well, if you took away all the fancy animations and the colors and the graphics and the wizardry, you would basically see 5-7 dots that are organized in a way that maximizes their ability to achieve their goal, which is to defeat some kind of large beast or creature. But they've established a network based on each of those different dots' abilities and strengths. And this last one about signals, right? Signals can be very clear. Like when the majority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer from New York, says, we are not going to go home for Christmas unless we pass a bill. Well, that's a pretty clear signal. Other times when, say, the chair people of the committee that's investigating the January 6th insurrection, there's not a lot of news going on, but we just read today or yesterday in the newspaper that they've had over a few hundred interviews with people, collecting information, collecting what would happen that day. So they're not clearly signaling what's going on. It's less clear to us what they're doing, but if the media starts to pick up on it and they report it, then it becomes clear, or the signal becomes more clear, given that. So all in all, there's just so much going on in games and in politics, and I hope you just got just a taste of it, which was the point of this workshop series, to introduce you to these things. And as we go forward in future semesters, we'll hopefully explore others that come across. So with that, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen in, to watch, and to engage, and take care, and happy holidays.